Hello everyone, my name is Yael and I'm a student here in Mahindra United World College and a part of the group that is running and has been running UWC online for the last 4 and a bit weeks. And we are really excited to present to you our last lecture um, of this time slot, and it's really incredible to be starting this last week of our process together. Today we have with us Cary. He is working here in United World College Mahindra in India on a project called for the Project Based Diploma, which is a high school diploma which is project based. So instead of going to regular classes, your standard education is not too standard. You actually do projects in order to learn. And he's going to talk to us about activism today, and I'm really excited to hand it over to him.
Hi, I'm Cary, and I am the coordinator for the project-based diploma here at the Mahindra United World College. And thanks for having me. I'm really honored to be here. The main thing that I wanted to talk about today, which Yael introduced, was activism and how that works out. I wanted to give you just a little background on what I do and where I'm coming from. I am a past student. I went to the United World College of the Atlantic in 1997. I graduated in 99. And while I was there, I caught the peace bug. There was something fun and fascinating and rich about working in peace. I found out that this was a discipline, that there was a school, that there was a field of study that I could connect with and continue to engage with. And I was really happy to be able to get that and share that. And I've been lucky enough to work on this for a little while in a few places. I've been doing work in most continents. I've been at this for about 15 years now. So I think I know a little about it. I know, and really fun questions that make me sort of stop and think about what I'm doing. And so, yeah, that's me. That's who I am. Thanks for coming. And let's talk about activism, or my views on activism, which hopefully give you stuff to think about. So the first question, and it's the question that drives the work that I do, and I think it's a good question to start with, is what does good look like? What does it look like to you? What do you think it should be? Where those change, a good picture of what that is, then it's easier to work. Then we can work. Then we know what to do. And there's 7 billion of us sharing the planet, so sometimes good can be a little different. And that means we sometimes need to work on what good is. One of the most active had with activism is, and I'm trying to be very careful here. I'm going to tell you a story about something that I was involved with. And I'm going to try to strip away the pieces that I really shouldn't be telling you about. But a very good friend of mine was working for an embassy, and he was in charge of the public information section. And there was a problem in his country, and understandably, a lot of people were concerned and they wanted to show their concern, and they organized a demonstration. They organized a protest outside of his embassy. And this was in a country which is known for rules and structure. And there are lots of those around. And because he's probably one of the smartest people I know, he got together a catering company, got together a party planning company, and had 100 chairs put out across the street in a park. He catered breakfast, coffee, tea, drinks, cakes, muffins, sandwiches for 100 people, and had it put right across the street by those chairs. The protest came, the protesters looked around, and because it was morning, they realized that there were chairs and sandwiches, and they went across the street down, took a break, got something to eat, and by the time the news trucks came by, all they saw was a group of people happily sitting having breakfast, and they just kept on driving. This was a legitimate protest. It was meaningful. The problem in the country that they were protesting was valid, but nothing ever happened. And you had a great group of activists who lost the opportunity to be active. And yeah, that was something a friend of mine did in a place because something happened in another place. But it's one of the things I like to think about when people get really excited about activism and how that works out. And it brings me back to that question: what does good look like? What is good? What are we trying to get? Where are we trying to be? What are we trying to do? The easiest way to respond to that, once we've figured out what good is or what we want good to be, is to think about, great, I know what it is. How can I contribute? How can I do this? What can I do? I need to do something. I need to get stuff going. And that's a good thing. And passion's important. And without passion, so don't ever stop that. That's always useful. I think another interesting place to start, which might be a bit more helpful, and again, helpful because you're probably not the only one who has a idea of what good is or where you want to be, is how do I know what good is? Question one, what does good look like? Is how do I know? How do I know why am I there? Why did I end up at that place? Why is that somewhere I want to be? And that's usually not the fun part. It's not the exciting part. It's not the placards and banners and raging against. It's the quiet, introspective, I need to think about this. And if you're doing it right, maybe you need to think about it some more. And that's probably the ones that are worth it. I think. What does good look like? And once you can figure that out, how do I know? How do I know what good is? And that's an interesting place to be. And I think it's one of the reasons why we're here, to figure out exactly how do we know, and how do we make sure that we're doing something that's right? And that's, I think, a good use of our time. And figuring that out, and this is where I get really personal, and I spent 15 years, wow, that's a long time, working on peace and conflict and violence and learning a lot. And there is so much more that I still need to figure out. But one of the things that I think is worth appreciating is that in a lot of ways, we're doing a lot better. We're not good. I'm never going to say that. And World Peace 2015 probably isn't on track just yet. We have about 6 weeks left to get it right. So that might not happen. World Peace 2016, still open though. But we are doing better. There are things that we're doing that we didn't do, are more peaceful, that are less violent, that are more supportive. And that's good. And that's worth doing. And when we try to figure out what good is, when we try to find out how we know what good is, it's worth remembering that and keeping that in mind and keeping that context in our heads, that yeah, we are doing some things better. Saying that, trying not to gloss over it, we have a lot of work to do, a lot. The last week was a really good example of how much more work we have to do with reducing violence and creating a more peaceful world for all of us, that we are in a place where we can meet our needs. We can all meet our needs, and we can meet our needs with supporting each other. We can meet our needs without using violence, and we can get to that point where we're transforming conflicts. And yeah, we do have a lot more work to do. That's one of those things that we can get to. So going back to the original question, what does good look like? Why are we here? What are we doing? What are we trying to get right? Yeah, how do we know? How do we know? And once we've got that point, I think it's then easier for us to get back to that final section, which is how can I contribute to good? I know what it looks like. I know why. I know why I'm here. I know what led to me realizing that this actually is good. This is true. This is where we want to get to. This is peace. There are few ways that just pop up, and we'll do this in many different setups and different scenarios. And one of the first ways, and this might sound really simple or shallow, but it's not. It's actually quite important. It's the idea that peace is going to start inside. It's that process that we go through, that we try to make sure that when we figure out how can I contribute to this, making sure that we individually, personally, that we are contributing. We know what good looks like. We know how we got to that point. We know why we're thinking about good in this way. And then we get to figure out, okay, what am I doing? And it starts with me doing something with me, about me. And whether that's taking time to sit or meditate or think or reflect, a good starting point is inside. It's always inside. And that's a useful start. And it's a useful start. It's a useful process to keep going, just to make sure that, when we're contributing, we're actually really contributing. The second part of this is what I talked about before. It's making sure that you don't get stuck having breakfast across the street in a park from a place. Is protesting, is making your voice heard, in a very loud and real way that can't be ignored, that's hard to ignore, that's present, that brings you, that gets a wonderful collection of people who believe in the same thing and are working towards the same thing and are all contributing to good. It's getting loud, it's getting public, it's getting present, it's making sure that you're felt. That's a good place to be. And making sure that you're focused on that is a good thing. And having enough people in that place who believe in the same thing and who understand what good is and how we got to good and who know why we're here, that helps. That helps a lot. And the last part, and this is where I'm going to open it up, is to participate. And one of the things that I was told very early on to always remember is, if you have found yourself in a situation where the only thing you can think about is just running outside and shouting at the sky, think about if it's too late to find another way in. And one of the beautiful ways that we can do this now, which I don't think could do 5 years ago or 10 years ago or 20 years ago, is we have more ways to participate now. And I was talking to a very good friend of mine yesterday who helped me understand this, helped me explain this a lot better. We have these systems that are real and that are current and that continue. And one way is to add and try to chip away at the existing structure. Another way is to try to create these parallel processes that are random or maybe moving away slightly, so that we always have another setup, another way of engaging with this. And eventually this status quo that has existed and is the way it's always been. Why would you ever think of changing it? It changes. It changes because people have more options, and people have more options because people see more, and they engage more, and they participate more, and that's a big part of it. It's the ability that we have now to participate in so different ways. Walking out in the street and making your voice heard, whether it's getting a group of people together online and creating an education platform that everyone can share. This is what we do. There are different ways of participating. And sometimes if we can do that quietly parallel to the system, or we can infiltrate the system and try to change it from inside, or just continue to work outside of it until you simply cannot be ignored. There are very different ways to do this. And I think one of the fun parts about our time and our world and our lives now is that we get to think about what good looks like in so many different places, from so many different places. And because we have so much more information, I think that we get to understand and have a better appreciation of what good is and how we get to that point and why we're there. And that's a great thing. That's a great place to be. And I think the final part of it is that we have so many different ways that we can contribute, and so many different people with whom we can work on contributing and being activists. And I think those are three interesting ways to do that. And that's an introduction. I'd love to have a conversation with you about this. But one is meditating and just taking some time for yourself to make sure that you are indeed contributing, that the work you're doing, that the ideas you have, that the time you're spending is real and is valuable and is honest and is true and is peaceful. And the second one is ways, the way that we activists work in so many different scenarios is to get a group of people together, get that critical mass, and move public opinion and move the people that need to be moved. And it's real and it works. Just don't sit down and have breakfast. And the last one is to think about the other ways that we have now to participate, to engage, to challenge, to push, to ask, to make our voices heard. We don't always have to be in a large group outside a building with a placard. There are other ways to make sure that we're known, that our ideas are out there, that we can get other people involved. And I think that's one of the fun parts about being an activist today, and why I'm happy being a part of it. That's what I think is those are my interesting thoughts. I think they're interesting on activism and where we are today. And yeah, I'd love to hear your questions if you have them. I can talk about more of the work that I'm doing, or I can go into more detail if you find it interesting. But thanks for listening.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Cary, for all your input. It was really interesting. And we have got one question that looks really interesting. And we are going to ask Cary now, and hope he has an interesting answer for it. And the question is, are there professional activists who can work on anything? And should there be professional activists?
That's a good question. I think I'm of two minds of this, and that sounds like I'm trying to escape without answering your question, and it's really not. I think they're professional activists, and then I think they're professional organizers. I think getting people together, I think creating a space where we can jointly, I think creating the opportunities for people to come together. I think we do have a space for that, and I think that's very important. I think I appreciate that there's always going to be a pushback on that. The professional organizer is someone who honestly believes in what they're doing, and passion counts. It's real. It's important. It has value. It's a good thing. And things that you lose when you strip this down and make it make it just about the process, is that you run the risk of losing that passion. But like I said, you gain the opportunity to get that core competency in organization, which is useful. And hopefully from core competency, we can work on knowledge sharing across more people and more opportunities. So yeah, there is a role. Yes, there is a risk. I hope that answered your question. Do you have another question? Sure.
Okay, thank you so much. One more question we have is, one second. One more question, we consider it as activism.
I would like to think so. That's a great question. I would like to think so. I think one of the reasons why we're here is that the colleges thought that education was a good way to do this, to change the world, to make things different. The idea is that education is a force for peace and a sustainable future. That's what we agree. That's what we think. That's why we're all working with the same and schools. One of the things that we're trying to do, one of the ways that we're trying to change the system, that we're trying to rock the boat with traditional high school education, is at Mahindra College, we're trying to figure out a different way to do high school. And the United World Colleges have been doing that for quite some time. And this is one more step. It's the next evolution in that process. And it's called the Project Based Diploma. And the idea is more access to information. We have an extremely capable group of young people around the world who are more exposed, who are more able, who are more engaged, who are more capable than we ever have been. And they would benefit more from self-directed learning, from supported learning, instead of total content-driven classroom style learning process. And most interesting time and exciting time to do this is at the end of high school. It's right before you leave for the world. It's proving that you're ready, and you are. And that's one of the ways that we're doing that. The idea is that our students will each choose a large community service project that has personal significance for them, that is meaningful, that has value, that they're passionate about doing. Again, passion is always important. We'll spend some time working on it and making sure that the ideas are solid, making sure that it's valuable, making sure that it's meaningful, making sure that it's good, that it's actually good, and it's not just what we think good is. And for the rest of their time here, for the rest of those 3.5 semesters, they'll be working with professional mentors, they'll be working in the community, they'll be spending time in the classroom working on theory, they'll be spending time outside of the classroom having a practical application to that theoretical process. And that's valuable, and that's really interesting. And we think we have the tools and resources and the network and the community to support our students through this. And we know for a fact that our students have the insight and intuition and thought and research to find interesting problems that we can solve. And the beauty of our system and our structure and our students is that we trust them to do it. And we know that they're ready. And honestly, even if they're not, they're 18 years old and they're adults now. So the best way to make sure that they're ready is for them to do it. And there's a Japanese proverb: if I see it, I'll understand. If I hear it, I'll understand. If I do it, I will really understand. And experiential education is that. It's making sure that your hands can touch it and your ears can hear it and your eyes can see it and your whole being can experience this thing. And from a pedagogical standpoint, it improves retention rates. It makes sure that it's meaningful and you can continue working with it. And you can also make wider connections which help you when there's no test and there's no exam and there's not 5 minutes left and you have to shade in 3 more boxes doing it. And that's what we think helps. And that's how we think that education is a means to be an activist. That's one of the things that we're doing, and we think it's useful. If you want to know more about it, please just have a look at the UWC Project Based Diploma, and my contact details are going to be in here. So I'd love to hear from you. This is what I do, and I think it's going to be really exciting, and I'd love you to get on board. That's a great question. Thank you.
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting and awesome process that is happening now in UWC Mahindra College, and is really, really interesting to look into. And you can just send us any questions and we will move them to Cary, and also we will also give you his details if you want to talk to him directly. Another question that you sent to us was, how did you, Cary, get into activism, and how do you suggest to teenagers to get into that today? What can be a good first step after you understand you start to understand what is good for you? What can be your first step towards that good?
Great question. Thank you. That's fantastic. How did I get involved? Throughout high school, I spent most of my time working with a community service organization that had a lot of value for me, that had meaning, whose ideas I respected. And I knew that it was something that I wanted to spend more of my time doing. I just didn't know that there was a wider frame or wider network or wider field of study called peace study. And I got to the United World College of the Atlantic, and suddenly it was there, it was present, and I found it. And I probably would have found it later in a different scenario, but I think that being a student at UWC Atlantic helped me a lot to really appreciate exactly what I could do, and made me realize that there were so many other people doing this really amazing work. And that's how I got involved. And the second part of your question is a lot more exciting for me, and I'll tell you how I started participating. And I think it has value, and I think it's really meaningful. The things that I did were, I showed up at someone's door and I said that I had some time. I was really interested in this, and it seemed that they were doing good work. They were also working with the same ideas that I was thinking about, and I asked them if I could help. That's the simple way to do it. No matter how busy you are in high school or in university, I guarantee if you make time and you speak to your professors or teachers or counselors, or figure out a way to take some time off on a Saturday, you will have time to help. And there are a lot of people doing interesting things. There are people doing really good work. Sometimes showing up and saying, and sometimes that's not going to be as perfect or as glamorous as we would like it to be, and I appreciate that. And sometimes it means you'll be making copies. And if your job is making copies, make sure that you read every single one of those pages and get a really good idea about it. And while you're waiting for 100 copies to be printed out, just scribble some notes down, and when you go back and hand it over, ask your boss, your supervisor, what does that mean? Have we thought about that? Could we do that better? That's the jump from copying to actually getting something else done. It's the reason why when you just ask to make coffee, just linger in the room a little more and make sure that you understand where those conversations are. And when those conversations are done, or when those conversations are at a really interesting point, ask needs to be included. Make your contributions there. And that's that jump. making coffee sounds pretty boring. Making copies sounds pretty boring, but there's that jump you get to make, and that's where you get to participate. And it's making sure that everyone around you knows that you're ready to participate, that you want to do this. How do you do it? That's a great question. One, show up with a smile on your face and a clean shirt and say, hey, I want to help out. Just let me in the room. It's the first thing you do probably isn't going to be about money. The first thing you're going to do is just going to be there, be in the room when this is happening. And there is no real substitute for being in the room. You can make time for that. And yeah, sometimes it's going to be hard, but if you want good, you're going to have to contribute. And one of the ways to contribute is to participate. And that means you're going to have to do some work. But no one's going to turn down free help. I promise you they won't. That's something that you're going to have to figure out, but it can be done. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much. One more question we got was, when I started doing activism, how do I know that I'm doing the right thing?
That's a good question. That's the second part of it. What does good look like? And how do I know that it's good? Ask yourself. One, ask yourself, is this really right? And the second way to do that, the way to follow up, is ask someone else. And this is where a little bravery comes in, but if you're ready to hold a placard and run down the street, then you've got the bravery. You have the bravery part wrapped up, so that's good. Ask someone who you do. If you're open, and you should be, then they'll give you something to think about. And that's a place to be. One of the most important things I've learned how to say is that I am willing to be wrong about this. And if you're willing to fight for it, if you're willing to be an activist, if you're willing to contribute, then appreciate that you might be wrong about it. And that's okay. Being wrong is good. It means you get to cross one thing off the list and you get to do it again. So that's not a problem. But how do you know if what you're doing is the right thing? Ask someone. Do more reading. A good friend of mine is a really good way of presenting this. We will find our enemies in books. We will find them in papers. We will find them written down. If you know you have a really good idea, go online and search for criticisms of it and try to understand where they're coming from and see if they're right. And they might be. And that might hurt your feelings and it might bruise your ego for a bit, but good never looks like proud and good never looks like a contented ego. Good looks like your needs are met and my needs are met. And there is no violence required to make all of those things happen. That's what good looks like to me. So talk to people you disagree with. Read more, do more research, and find the things that don't support your idea to refine exactly what you're thinking about and get that a bit more specific. And if you have a really good idea of what good looks like, then it becomes a little easier to work on it. It becomes a little easier to contribute to it. That's how I think you know what good is and how you can be sure about it. And I think that's a good place to start.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. One more question that we got was whether you think there is a power of activists that are working together.
Great question. Yes, absolutely. There is so much more that we can do with more people working together, it makes us stronger. It creates a culture, and that culture helps. There are, to be really simplistic, there are violent actions, there are violent structures, and there are violent cultures. And each of these types of violence are things that I think as a peace activist, we need to work towards transforming into something more supportive, more caring, more nurturing, more peaceful. Communities develop cultures. Getting more people together, working towards a common good is always, always going to be a good thing. Getting people together is a lot easier if everyone understands what's happening. Getting people to want things is easier when what you're doing actually makes sense. And some of the things that make the most sense are good things. That's where the previous question was really, really useful and really valuable. Making sure that what you're doing is good, is right, is valuable, is peaceful, is key. And that's one of the reasons why we need to challenge ourselves. And once we can get that right and refine that, it makes it easier for us to explain it. It makes it easier for us to share it. It makes it easier for us to get more people working with us, because our ideas are precise and they are concrete and they are understandable and they are relatable. And it makes it easier to get more people on board. And that is always good, because people in large groups create communities, communities create cultures, and more peaceful cultures are going to be the responses to violent cultures. And it will help us transform those violent cultures into more peaceful scenarios. And that will always be good. That's a great question. Thanks.
Yeah, that's cool. Very cool. One more question that we got was asking whether you could give names of few theorists or writers that students of the course can look into in order to expand their knowledge on conflict resolution and topics that are related to the work that you have done.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's a great as well. Just get out of the way really quickly. Is if you're interested in the field, if you're interested in looking at some of this work, then it might be useful just looking up Johan Galtung. It's a really interesting guy. He is very old. He is a really interesting person, and I use interesting in exactly the way that I want it to sound. The name's out there. You might as well just get it out of the way. Grab some stuff, find something that's accessible, read it. A really good, really valuable, and this is where that earlier question comes in, a really useful critique of that is Barash, is David Barash. Really valuable guy. Check it out. Has space. It's really exciting to understand, and it's a good approach to working on that. So that's the introduction to theory. It's useful. It's a good way to do that. With regards to, I'm trying to think of accessible material. Jürgen's good. Jürgen Jensen, a friend of mine that does quite a lot of work on nonviolence and nonviolent responses. Really interesting guy, odd character, but accessible and makes space to do this. I think those are some easy places to start. I'm trying to. That's a great question. I'm going to give you a bunch more information in the answer to that in the discussion board. Yeah, that's a really good question. But those are interesting places to start. Just get the theory out of the way. You might as well get it done. Barash is accessible. Galtung is interesting. It's, yeah. And check out Jurgen's work. But I'll get you a better list: nonviolence, peace education, peace theory, communication, journalism. We'll put together a list. Yeah, good question.
Yeah, it's a very interesting question to ask, because if we want to learn how to connect the good that Cary was talking about, then it's very interesting to look into the theory of people who were thinking how to bring along that good, and put a lot of thought into that topic, which brings us to another question of this theory is mostly concerning activism, but the activism that we mostly worked on throughout this course was online activism. So we wanted to ask if you have few ideas regarding that, some pros and cons, so we can be more critical towards what we have done about online activism in the last few weeks.
Okay. Good question. And criticism's great. That's a good place to start thinking about. It's a good thing to be aware of. One of the benefits of the world in which we live now is that we are, for so many of us, more connected and more deeply connected. The world in which we live is that place where we can see our friends and we'll never physically meet them. And that means something very different to me, to someone, again, 10 years younger than me, because your world is different. The way you organize your life is different. So the idea of online activism being something new is an interesting concept, because it's important, it's critical, it's essential. It's where we live now. It's how we relate. It's through having this online with lots of people connecting from many different places. It means that this is a space that is real, that we occupy, that we participate in. So it has to have value, because that's where we are. It's where we're going to get together. It's where we're going to collect, going to meet each other. So the value of that is always going to be important. Immediately that brings up a couple of questions. One, you're trying to figure out exactly how this is working. And sometimes, rarely, sometimes it's good to be able to bounce ideas off each other. And one of the things that being physically present helps with is tone and style and nuance and subtleties. And that helps. And it means that if we're going to keep working, as we keep working on online activism, that we need to be really clear about what we're saying and how we're expressing ourselves. And that, again, that comes with time, and that comes with research, and that comes with getting the questions right, and comes with getting the answers right. So that's something to think about. It's not a reason to stop doing what we're doing, because I think this is it's where we live, and we exist in a space that is both real and physical, and it's also virtual, and it is expansive, and we have to find a way to support that. One of the benefits of this virtual space, this online space, is that it keeps going, and that it never sleeps, and you have everyone working all the time in this space that actually doesn't change. So as the sun rolls along, this webpage, this house, this discussion board is going to remain the same and remain active. This action that we're doing is going to be happening from the very same place and carry with it more weight, because we have a larger community, a community that never sleeps. And that's a good thing, and that's a valuable thing. And I think that's something that's really important. And it's one of the differences with assembling in a park or in a street or in a store or in a parliament, is that whatever happens, the physical space, the ability to hold us all, is always going to limit the amount of people that can participate. And the time will always mean that at some point it's going to get dark and we should go home, or people will suddenly get tired and want to leave. The virtual space, the online space, means that we never have to do that. We never run out of space. And we always have more people coming in and moving with us, and that's always good. One of the criticisms that gets leveled at online activism that we're never quite sure who's participating because we never meet them. But that's not something unique to online activism. It's a concern, and it means that we have to spend a lot more time being careful and being more thoughtful and being more judicious and understanding exactly the nature of the people with whom we work, which is different when we're online. It's not any more difficult. It's simply different. It's something we perceive as being difficult because it's new, and being new, it's scary. That doesn't mean it's wrong. It means that we have to figure out new ways of doing things. Fortunately, you already know how to do this, and it's something that you do all the time. I don't always, and I get it wrong, and I can't conceive of how my parents figure it out because they're a couple of years behind me. But we have to do things differently. And one of the things that online activism is still doing, and it's early relative to other things that we've done before, but we've been doing it for a while. One of the things that we continue to try to do better at is making sure that we get it right and understand how to connect and how to share our ideas and make sure that our ideas are in sync. But that's not unique to this space. It's something that we have to carry around because it's new, but it's not different. So that's a fair, I think that's a more reasoned response to how we're going to get to that point. Another criticism that I think we have is that it's sometimes easy to be an armchair activist, and I say this sitting in an armchair, so I appreciate the irony there. But one of the things that we can do is the ability to do more work in places that are more convenient for us. That doesn't mean that we're not taking it seriously. It doesn't mean that it's something that doesn't need to be respected. It means that we've created a space that is more convenient, and it being more convenient, more people can engage with it. But yes, we do have to fight this label of being an armchair activist, which is if it isn't convenient and if this isn't something that I can do without any effort whatsoever, if I have to do something more than click a mouse button, then maybe I'm just not going to do it. I don't think that's unique to working online. I think it's a criticism that gets leveled, and I think it's real, and I think we need to focus on that. And again, that goes back to being able to know the people with whom you're working and making sure that they all agree on a common topic. And that's something that makes sure that we need to know what good looks like and how we can be sure that what we're doing is good. So yeah, making sure that we have a space for that, making sure that that space is real, and making sure that the people participating want to be there and are willing to put in the work. There will always be a need for work. Thanks.
Okay, we have time for just one last question, and it's very optimistic and nice. Could you share one dream you have with us for the future? One dream maybe of that good that you were talking about.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. I appreciate that. I found myself working, studying, working in peace and conflict 15 years ago, and it's been great. It's been a chance to learn more and see more and understand more than I ever thought about 20 years ago. And that's a good thing. And I think that's great. Every time I do something, I get an opportunity to realize just how much deeper the rabbit hole can get and how much more specific I need to be about what good is. A few years ago, I had an opportunity to work as a peacekeeper in a country that needed peacekeeping. And it was a fascinating learning experience for me. it was one of the most difficult things I've ever done. It was challenging physically and emotionally and mentally. And full disclosure, ultimately, I just didn't do a very good job, and I had to leave on a helicopter because I just wasn't physically doing very well, and I had to go away. The piece of that work, and it's something that makes me, the reason I did that was because it was real. It was the tip of the burning spear of that was used to cut edges in peace work, in peace and violence. And I was very happy I got to do it. And that was something that gave me a lot of joy, and I was very happy about it. The things that I find most useful to be levers of peace are education and public health. And those are the things that I find most joy in. They're the things about which I am most passionate, and the things that I work on all the time. The things that I want to see, that I'd love to be able to see, are increased access to education, and meaningful education, and worthwhile education. We've been teaching the same way with desks and chairs and rows since the Industrial Revolution. That means it's actually a really good way to do it because we keep doing it. It also means that the world has changed quite a lot, and we need to do different things. What I would love to be able to see is new curricula, new ways of delivering content that appreciate that we have access to the data that we need. Maybe the next thing we need to focus on as a team, as a large humanity, is making sure that we get the analysis section right. It's that next step on that staircase of education. That's what I would love to see. I'd love to see spaces that are created that respect the ability of our students to learn independently, to get the information, and work more on analysis and investigation. That's what I'd love to see. That's the thing that would bring me the most joy in education. In public health, because I've been working on communicable diseases, one of the things that I'd love to be able to see, and I think we're close, we're getting really close, and doing really good work on this, is a sustainable way to deliver one pill a day for some of our more complicated diseases that require multiple tablets and multiple administrations per day. Easy to access, easy to administer, sustainable, and at a price that everyone can afford and that manufacturers can remain in business with. That's the thing that would give me lots of joy for my interest in public health. Easily administered, sustainable medication. And for education, it would be a way of engaging with learning that gives us a chance to respect the work that we can do now. Those are the two things that are the most important. Yeah. Is that fair? Cool. Thanks.
Amazing. So with this hopeful last question that leaves at least me with a lot of enthusiasm and passion, I would like to say thank you to Cary for this incredible talk. It was full of insights, and yeah, really, I've learned much from it, and even got a few names to further look into things. And thank all of you for watching, and thank all of you for being here for the last 4 and a bit weeks and participating and being so amazing with everything. And to encourage all of us to take the knowledge that we've got from this talk and further our analysis, as Cary said, and further our action, and understand that even though most of us are quite young and are teenagers, we have a huge amount of power, and we can create beautiful change in this world. And I believe in you, and I believe in me, and I believe in Cary, and I know that we can do awesome things. So yeah, so let's do it. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great rest of evening. Bye-bye.